beautiful flowers onto the stage at the start of the speech. They were grown by a wonderful woman over there called Asia on her allotment to prove there's red flowers coming up for a Labour future. And thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here supporting the Labour Roots events and the community organising that we're doing as a party. We're doing it because we want everyone involved. We're doing it because Labour Roots is the roots of our movement, the roots of our community, and the roots from which we will build an election victory. Our movement is about engagement of people. And what the mainstream media and the right-wing parties don't understand is that we do things differently. We do things differently because we have different beliefs, different values, and a real sense of community, of bringing people together. The whole principle behind community organising, and I want you all to put your hands together and thank all of our organisers, our community organisers, what they've done today and done on all the other days. Because they're the ones that are going to make sure that our communities come together to achieve things together. This afternoon we had a series of discussion groups and meetings that were impressive, interesting, and up to me, absolutely fascinating. People in housing stress around the country. People worried about how they're going to pay their rent, worried if they're going to get a council place, worried if they're ever going to get anywhere of their own to live. Organised together can bring about change, will bring about regulation of the private rented sector, will bring about the construction of 500,000 council houses, and will end right to buy so that we end up with more council housing at the end of the first period of a Labour government than there is at the present time. And we will also immediately provide money to local authorities to build, buy, whatever is needed in order to ensure that the street homeless get somewhere to live. Of course, I don't believe a society can call itself civilised if it walks by on the other side while several thousand of our fellow citizens sleep on the streets. There is an environmental crisis, there is an air pollution crisis in this country. Again, people coming together to demand and get cleaner streets, cleaner air, safer water, and protection of our natural world. Again, strengthens people in their sense of resolve. And that is what bringing communities and people together are about. There are those in our society that will always divide us. There are those that will look for a minority to blame for all their ills. And, well, he's a very small minority. But it's a serious threat. Look at the history of Europe between the two world wars. At the end of the First World War, in the Weimar Republic in Germany, a party grew up that decided that all the economic problems of the Weimar Republic were the fault of Jewish people. That hatred started with abuse, became violent, became state violence, became state imprisonment, became state murder, became the concentration camps, and became the Holocaust. That is where racism and anti-Semitism lead you to. There is no place whatsoever for any form of racism anywhere in our society. And so, those that promote Islamophobia or far-right racism in our society are totally unacceptable in any form whatsoever. The strength of a community is coming together with respect for each other's background, language, faith and culture. That unity is unbreakable when we work together. And I pay compliments to the people of Bolton and the people all across the Northwest that saw off Stephen Yaxley Lennon in his attempt to gain a place in the European Parliament. The EDL will not be allowed to divide us. And so our strength is, our base is, our community is our unity. But it's also how we do our politics. We have at the moment, temporarily, a Tory government in this country. That's the right response, very good. I guess you don't particularly like the Tory government, is that? Thank you. Okay, I think we're all agreed. Thank you! We're all agreed on that. But there is a big difference between us and them. Yes, there's many policy differences which we know of, obviously. But there's also one very big difference. The Tory party is bankrolled by big business, big money and big millionaires. And an incoming Labour government will introduce legislation to clean up our politics in this country. Nobody will be allowed to make political donations unless they are UK registered taxpayers and paying their tax. We will end this whole business of cash for access to leaders of parties. We will legislate to clean up politics in this country. Our party is funded, yes, by donations and affiliations from trade unions, democratic organisations that freely decide how they're going to spend their money that is there legally in their political fund. It's also supported by individual donations. We don't have big money behind us as a party. At the end of the 2017 general election campaign, I asked our head office to do an analysis of the income we'd received during the election campaign. And you know what? The average donation to the Labour Party's election campaign in 2017 was £22. Small donations from millions of people who saw in Labour some opportunity of something better and something different in the future. So we will introduce that legislation and we will go into government pledged to bring about some massive changes. At the moment, we've got Boris Johnson as possibly the longest or shortest ever serving Prime Minister in this country. And when Parliament returns, we will table, in my name, a motion of no confidence in this government. And I say to all other parties who say they want to stop a no-deal exit from the European Union with all the consequences that follow from that, if you believe in what you are saying, then you must support my motion of no confidence in this government to get rid of it. And the purpose of that government would be to ensure the people of this country have a choice of who their government should be and have a choice about their future relations with the rest of the world. Unless we stop Johnson in what he's doing now, it's a headlong rush by Boris Johnson into the arms of Donald Trump and a trade agreement with the USA and all the deregulation and investor protection that will follow from that. I am not prepared to stand by and allow our economy to be destroyed on the altar of American big business. So we will do that do that as soon as we can in September when Parliament returns, because I'm very determined that the message of people in this country who've had enough of the poverty, the inequality, the injustice, the hardships caused by the political decision taken in 2010 to impose austerity on the people of this country. And I say to those parties, including the Liberal Democrats, that voted for benefit cuts, that voted for cuts to the disabled, that voted for the austerity that's been imposed on local authorities all over this country, and the frozen wages and the poverty that goes with it. Think on. We are going to fight an election campaign on a policy of total opposition to austerity and investment in the future of the people of this country to achieve better standards of living and more hope in society. Fundamentally, Britain is a very unequal society. And when I was outside Bolton Town Hall this morning, I was asked a question by a journalist, what was my reaction to Sajid Javid's latest proposals on tax reform? I said, well, as far as I understand it, Sajid Javid's idea of tax reform is to reduce what he calls euphemistically the tax burden on the very richest and the biggest corporations in order that they may do better, and somehow or other the rest of us are supposed to be pleased about it. I simply say this to Sajid Javid and to the Tories: you have created the most indescribable levels of inequality in our society. The gap is getting bigger, the poverty is getting worse, and when we have millions of children living in poverty, we have underfunded schools, underfunded hospitals, underfunded care system, homeless people, overcrowded, and young people denied decent wages. That is what austerity has brought. It's time to end it. And it's time to give hope to people. Think of all the areas that need to be changed. Think of what could and should and must be done in education. Education is something we all believe in. Education became free initially in the 1870s for those that campaigned for it. And our current education system is getting closed in a bit. Under fours, education often has to be paid for, nursery places. Post-school education often has to be paid for, usually has to be paid for by the individual. Gradually, we've changed education from being a right into a commodity. We will establish a national education service that will be dedicated to ensuring that education is a right, not a privilege, and not a commodity to be bought and sold. And if you think about it, the inequality begins at the very earliest ages. Inequality begins almost at birth. A child growing up in an overcrowded, poor household in a poor part of Britain, unable to access nursery education, an underfunded primary school, and so on, is less likely to achieve what they could in their life than those growing up in a more affluent area. And so, our pledge is we will bring in free nursery places for all 2 to 4 year olds for 30 hours a week. We will properly fund all primary schools, and we will ensure that all children in primary schools get a free school meal eaten together all the time they're in primary school. And we will end the indignity of head teachers having to collect money in order for the school to survive. But what we will also do is look at the way in which our system works. Children are wonderful, creative, imaginative. There's music, there's poetry, there's joy, there's imagination in every child. And somewhere along the line, we don't do enough to nurture and help them to develop that. So we will have a pupil arts premium which will ensure every child in every school gets a chance to learn a musical instrument and learn the artistic endeavours that they've got. Because a society that's creative in artistic and poetry and music is also creative in science, in maths, in so many other areas. It's about unleashing the imagination that's in us all. And we will end, as we promised in the last general election, the principle of charging tuition fees in universities by raising corporation tax in order to deal with that. And we will ensure there is real equality of value between those that choose good quality vocational education just as much as those that choose academic education. A society needs all of those skills, not to look down on one or the other of them. And so we will also refund properly adult education, so that those that want to pursue some new pursuit, new subject, new ideas, will get the chance to do it, and we as a community will support them in doing that. John MacDonald, I think, has done an incredible job as Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer since he was appointed to that position in 2015. He's changed the nature of the debate into one of opposition to austerity and in favour of investment within our society. John has proposed, and it will be in our manifesto, that we set up a National Investment Bank, that we have regional transformation funds in each English region and in Scotland and in Wales. And we will end the unbelievable levels of inequality in investment between London and the South East, the North West and the North East of England. There has to be investment in public transport and in infrastructure for a crossrail for the north. That degree of inequality cannot go on within our society. It's a Labour government that will work for every part of this country. Those communities that were attacked during the miners' strike by Thatcher, that denied any investment, that have had inadequate employment opportunities, have had poor quality, low paid jobs, have had 0 hours contracts jobs imposed upon them. A Labour government will do things very differently by investing in communities, by ending 0 hours contract work, by repealing the Trade Union Act, by giving people rights at work to be members of a trade union and the right of unions for access to workers in order to join them, because it is also about rights at work. This afternoon we were talking with some young people in one of the workshops we had about the difficulties they had in forming and joining a trade union. So I salute those unions that are organising in Amazon, in McDonald's, that are organising Deliveroo workers and all the other groups in the economy who work very hard, very insecure work, often very badly paid, sometimes quite dangerous work they're doing. They too have rights. The self-employed have rights. We will have a completely new approach, and Laura Pidcock is doing a fantastic job as our Shadow Minister of Labour, and in government it will be a new government department. As I'm determined there will be proper employment opportunities in Britain. On May the 1st, I proposed in Parliament that we declare, this country declares a climate emergency. I put that forward on behalf of the Labour Party. The Tories didn't dare oppose it, and it was carried. I want to say a big thank you to Becky Long-Bailey, Sue Hayman and Barry Gardner for the work they've done in promoting this. We cannot go on polluting this planet the way we are. We cannot go on observing the extinction of one species after another, watching soil degradation in our farms and not pretend at some point we are all going to be impacted very badly on it. No longer can we go on also just assuming that pollution happens in big cities and you could just move somewhere else and get away from it. You can't. There's an inequality here. Children living alongside major roads, Shorter life expectancy, less lung capacity than others. People living in polluted areas have a shorter life expectancy in general. The poorest people in the poorest cities around the world, particularly in South Asia, lead very short lives because of those levels of pollution. We cannot go on like this. So our emergency declaration is about a policy change direction for every single government department. It is also about opportunities. Opportunities of a green industrial revolution that will create, I believe, 400,000 jobs in clean green energy, will support the Swansea Bay Barrage, the Mersey Barrage, and above all, will support a cleaner green economy. It is about how we change the way in which we approach our planet and our world. And I am absolutely determined that we will be able to carry this through. So we won't be holding hands with Donald Trump and walking away from the Paris Climate Change Accord. We'll be working with others around the world to achieve that sense of unity around the world. Our government will change an awful lot of things. We'll bring rail, mail and water into public ownership. We'll give workers rights in order to organise in their workplace and to form cooperatives. But above all, we want to create a society that's inclusive and vibrant. For too long, the neoliberal economists have told us that the next generation is going to get less from the public realm than the previous generation. So they say to young people, get ready, you might need to pay for your health care, you might need to pay for your education, you might need to pay for your pension, all sorts of things which in effect are a retreat of the public from the provision of services and into private hands and individuals. Well, for individuals who've got means, that's fine, but for the majority, that is not fine at all. Surely our principle is about the strength of a community doing things together and achieving things together. So our government will be investing in all people. But our government will also play its part on the human endeavour on the world stage. I have not spent my life campaigning for peace, justice and human rights to go into government to do anything but continuing to campaign for peace, justice and human rights around the world. And look at the refugee crisis the world faces. People from two backgrounds who've had to leave their own society because of war, because of human rights abuse, because of discrimination, or because of environmental degradation. They're human beings just like us. They're human beings who happen to find themselves in a refugee camp in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, Mexico, many other countries around the world where people find themselves as refugees. And you know what? They're human beings just like every one of us in this hall this evening. And we should treat them as such. So it does mean addressing the causes of it. And I want our government to be part of recognising that the 65 million people around the world who are labelled as refugees or internally displaced have rights too. Otherwise, things get worse. Things get much, much worse. So let's have an approach to the world which is about peace, justice and human rights and is about investment in our future. Now, our party was founded by far-sighted and brave people. Our movement comes from the struggles of ordinary people. Those that stood for land rights, those that stood for workers' rights in industrial Britain, and those that made the most amazing and heroic attempts at solidarity with others in struggle. Never forget, it was the Lancashire cotton workers who stood in solidarity with the slaves in the United States by refusing to handle cotton that came in. Those acts of solidarity helped in many ways. And the celebration of the 200 years since Peterloo, in which 2,000 people went from Bolton to join in that demonstration, demonstrates just what that solidarity was about and how brutal that event was. Our movement is a movement of people. And so we challenge this government we take this government on. But above all, we will do that and achieve the victory we desire in an election by our unity as a movement. Our unity to achieve decency in our society, our unity to deal with the mental health crisis and the healthcare crisis, our unity to deal with the housing crisis, our unity to give hope to all young people in our society, our unity to bring about that decent and better world. So whatever attacks are thrown at us as a movement, as a party, or at individuals, think behind the motive of those that are attacking us. They want to divide us. They will not succeed. They will not succeed because we are determined to go into an election campaign in which you unite people into the possibilities of what can be achieved with a different government in a very, very different atmosphere and a very, very different world. I don't want this country to be one that's more and more unequal, that has trade deals with Donald Trump that will be deeply damaging to our society. I don't want a society dominated by the far right or the right in any other form. What I want to see is a society that proudly cares for all and invests in the future for all. If you're up for that, get involved in the campaign. If you're up for that, get out and campaign for it. And above all, push for a general election and we'll go forward. And you know what? We can win it. Thank you. Now, can I make one little announcement to you? Can you all get your mobile phones out? Come on, I know you've all got them.
Right, Jess, that means you've got to get yours out too. Right, get your phone out.
It's here somewhere.
Right, this is actually a mugging, so...
It's a mugging. You take over here.
Alright, so I need all of you to hold your phones up in the air. Jeremy, you two, phone.
It's up in the air.
Alright, the app is called Tinder. I suggest you download it now. I'm joking. Keep those phones up in the air. I need you to open up your browser, type in www.labour.org.uk/Bolton. Bolton, like bolt on, like Bolton, the place you're in. labour.org.uk/Bolton. Are you with me? I'm going to give you 5 more seconds to type that in, and as you do that, I'm going to tell you why this is important. Because, Jeremy, you're great, but we're not here to clap and cheer. We're here to win power for the men. This event was about bringing politics to the people. And this website is about bringing the people to politics. Is your browser open? You got it up? Go on, show me at the front. Yep. Oh, what have you been looking at? Dirty. So, if you type in your first name, your surname, you'll see a list of options for organising. You will see door knocking, phone banking, campaigning on social media, community-led campaigns, and of course, the green industrial revolution. Can you see all that? Are you into it? And then what you can do is you just tick the boxes that you're interested in. What boxes are you going to tick? Who's up for green industrial revolution? Who's up for phone banking? Who's up for door knocking? So some people are too enthusiastic. You know that door knocking's not the same as burglary, right? And with this tool, we're going to be able to get hundreds, get thousands of people out in the streets, changing politics in their community in time for a general election. Are you with me? One more time, I said, are you with me? One more time for Jeremy Corbyn, the man, the myth, the legend. And before we wrap up, what's that website again?
www.labour.org.uk/Bolton.
I just want to take some time to thank everyone who made this event happen. The community organisers, the activists, the volunteers, the Labour staff, the staff who work here at the stadium.
And the compares. And the compares.
I don't think we should be thanked for what we've done tonight. But there's one person who can't be here who deserves our thanks perhaps most of all. Even if you don't know him by name, he's a man whose work you're probably familiar with. His name is Simon Baker. Simon Baker was a devoted socialist, a comrade committed to the movement. Without him, Labour Roots would not have been possible. He was also an incredibly talented videographer. So he was responsible for the Labour Voices series, in which people talked about politics, the issues that were closest to their hearts. And he also produced the amazing party political broadcast, Our Town. And if you're anything like me, you would have bawled your eyes out when watching that for the first time. An incredibly moving piece of political cinema. So please, can we all put our hands together to thank Simon Baker? I know Jeremy's got some words.
We'll just send a message to Simon's family that we miss him deeply. He was the most amazing filmmaker, and it's such a loss of talent. But in his memory, we'll make some more great films. And you know what? Those films will inspire, and that inspiration will bring about the change that Simon spent his life trying to get, to bring about the voices of working class communities to be there, front and centre stage at all times in our policy making and our development. Thank you, Simon, for all that you did.
And so there's nothing left to do but go to the bar, charge your glasses, have a good time. General Batman is going to be back on the decks, so I hear. I'm putting in a request for Hey Ya, if possible. Nah, he's just like, I'm not doing that hen party music. You're on your own, love. But one more time for Labour Roots, you have been amazing. Thank you!